Hey, Christina here. Welcome to my crystal art series. Today I'll be taking you through the design process behind my Lapis Dreams artwork. Let's go. So here's my mood board, and this is normally how I start any project. I look around for inspiration and see what strikes me and what resonates with me. So through my exploration, I really discovered that I really liked the landscapes of British Columbia. So I wanted to bring in some of that energy that type of landscape in British Columbia would offer. So I also wanted to bring in path stones. So stones down a walkway to some extent. I really enjoy the design and the feeling that it brings. It has a little bit of a magical feel to it. And then I wanted to look at different shades of blue, depending on what kind of blue I wanted to bring upon this artwork. Did I want warm blues or cool blues? What did I want to associate this type of painting to a certain blue? Again, it's coming to energy and the kind of feeling that I want to bring to this work, as well as the feeling of lapis lazuli and what type of energy it radiates. I also looked at different types of textures, so water textures, as well as the rock textures, and the speckled texture that you would find in lapis lazuli. So we all know that lapis carries very interesting characteristics. It carries a lot of different shades of blue, very rich blues, as well as metallic silvers and golds within the stone. It also establishes some really interesting line work within the stone itself. Almost looks like there's little rivers inside the stone that really brings in a sense of movement. And that's what the feel I wanted to bring to this artwork. I started my piece in Procreate, and I started with building up the layout using contour lines, keeping everything loose and more flowy, you could say. And I used the monoline brush tool from the Procreate libraries to establish this. And I started adding in the base colors as well, exploring different hues on the blue spectrum, because I could explore the saturation or going into more of the cool blues and desaturating the color. I played around on what felt right to me. And then I brought in some textures that resonated with the feeling of a landscape, the feeling of the British Columbia landscape from those photos that I collected on the mood board. And then I started with, strangely, with the section 3 on this piece. I got really excited when I saw the brushes in Procreate, and the two brushes that I used was Ocean and Hard Rain. They had this speckled-like feel to it, and it really brought in the feeling of water, the feeling of movement and depth, and I thought it was really gravitating. And then I moved on to section 1, where I was exploring some more splattery types of brushes. And the brush that I came across was a brush called Aurora. And it was very interesting because it was very blotchy, which kind of reminded me of clouds. And it was a great impression for establishing clouds. So I continued on with that. And then I moved on to section 2 because I was trying to figure out a good texture that would speak to mountains, but also speak to the texture of lapis lazuli. So I came across this brush called Noise, And noise really helped to establish that pigment kind of feel, the speckly kind of feel that mountains would carry, as well as the inside of lapis lazuli. And then to close things off, I went in and grabbed the studio brush, so just your default brush, and I started outlining the edges of the Aurora brush so that we emphasize more of the clouds and really bringing in that impression of a landscape. But it was just small, tasteful hints, but it made things very interesting. Now, in terms of the thicker line across the mountain, the reason why I made it thicker was I wanted to bring in some depth to showcase what is the sky and what is the mid-ground. And it brought a lot of variety to the piece too, because I think if I kept to the very thin line, I feel that it would get lost. There's not too much contrast in between that. After finishing everything off in Procreate, I brought the piece into Adobe Illustrator, making an artboard the size of 8.5 by 11 and making 2 4x6 inch boxes and using the Pathfinder to merge them. And basically, we were laying out the card here. So I had to bring in some crop marks. So you'll see that I'm putting small little lines at each corner of the rectangle to showcase where I'll be cutting the piece, because that will be its actual size. And from there, I also put a line down the middle of the rectangle to showcase the fold line and how the card's going to be folded and where I have to score to make the fold. I placed the image in, and I also put the image on the right side of the layout because the card is laying flat right now, but when we print it, it's going to fold, and now that side is going to become the front, and then the left side actually is the back of the card. So now it's time to print it out. I saved the document as a PDF and printed out on cardstock paper, and I brought it to my drafting table and pulled out my scoring kit. And here you see that I'm using my special scoring tool to indent the page on the front side just so I see where things align, and then I flip it around and then measure it up and then score it all the way down the page so that it's a clean fold and it's not going to crack at the edge. That's what this scoring tool does. It keeps things clean and it's a seamless fold. And then after that, I flatten out the piece again, and I bring out my X-Acto knife and I start measuring up to the crop marks that I printed out for myself in the layout. And this was allowing me to cut it down to actual size and keeping everything straight. And then I have a bone tool, and this tool helps me with folding the card in a seamless fashion. I did not want to use my fingers because it doesn't clean up the fold. And then lastly, just to make things a little bit more interesting, I went in and grabbed some glitter paint, and I chose a section in the card that I thought needed a little bit more oomph, a little bit more emphasis. So the gold paint that I used was very subtle, but it really emphasized the speckled texture that I wanted to use in my painting. So what I did was just overlaid on top of that shape, let it dry, and then the finish was rather interesting. It had a little bit of a shine to it because the glitter itself, of course, had glitter in it, but it also had a little bit of a varnish to it in the paint. So it made things look a little bit more finished after that. So I thought it was a very good design choice to add in a little bit of hand-done things to make things look a little bit more interesting and not too digital. And here we are, another beautiful piece completed, looking very nice. And this is actually one of my favorite pieces so far. So I hope that you guys learned a lot in this video and hope that you stick around for my future videos. Bye!